The classical view of semantics relies on a highly specific mechanism. A word is a direct tether. It latches on to an object in reality, dragging a fixed set of application conditions along with it. Semanticist Paul Piotrowski rejects this attachment model entirely. He argues that words do not, and cannot, refer to reality on their own. Instead, polysemy, the presence of multiple related senses, is the standard operating procedure of language. Piotrowski severs that rigid line to the physical object. A word operates as a heading for an extendable family of mental concepts. This relocates meaning, shifting away from a fixed public definition, retreating into the private cognitive network of the thinker. This perfectly accounts for the flexibility of language, but it introduces a structural gap. If meaning is entirely walled off in private concept families, the model fails to explain the actual mechanics of how speakers successfully refer to physical objects during organized human encounters. We know words don't refer to reality by themselves, yet ordinary speakers navigate complex tasks, using those same words to select specific physical items without constant confusion. Piotrowski's model remains conspicuously silent on this mechanical linkage. It gives us the concepts, but no blueprint for how those internal concepts bridge the gap to external physical objects. Reference is not a private mental calculation. It is a distributed synchronization protocol. To prove that reference operates as a joint achievement of speakers, words, and structured circumstances, we must test the traditional theory against a rigidly bounded physical system, analyzing the constraints step by step. We will use a rigid logic puzzle based on a simple kitchen counter to map these physical constraints. We establish the initial condition, a user interacting with a pitcher of water. We trigger the first physical state transition. The user adds sugar to the pitcher, creating sugar water. Then the second physical state transition. The user adds lemon juice, and the mixture becomes lemonade. Observe the material reality of this transition. No alchemy occurred. The original H2O has not vanished or transmuted into an unrelated substance. It remains materially present, continuing to fulfill its functional role of dissolving the other ingredients and providing hydration. The linguistic shift from calling the liquid water to calling it lemonade is not triggered by a change in the fundamental chemical substance. The actual trigger for the linguistic shift is a change in the preferred classification. The mixture is now carved at a different practical scale. The labels change because lemonade becomes a more informative data tag for the organized mixture. Reality does not arrive pre-labeled with neatly packaged application conditions. Let's revert the system back to the intermediate state, state 2, sugar water. We introduce a communicative variable, a second user, an empty pitcher, and a request. One user asks, "Pass me the water so I can add the lemons." Strictly speaking, there is no pure water present, only sugar water. Yet this request causes zero communicative breakdown. If mapped out, the traditional semantic calculation fails. It checks static definitions against exact chemical properties, returning an error. The systemic calculation succeeds because the shared activity of adding lemons immediately identifies the correct container. If the user had instead asked for the pitcher, the exact same physical object would be selected by the system. Neither the word water nor the word pitcher carries a complete destination label inside itself. Reference relies inherently on contrast, on spatial organization, and the shared physical activity underway. This introduces a common assumption. If words drift in meaning, communication must inevitably break down due to increased ambiguity. We can test this by mapping linguistic load using the language insufficiency hypothesis, or LIH. This creates an effectiveness complexity gradient across 4 regions: invariants, contestables, fluids, and ineffables. Notice how polysemy behaves. It doesn't rise alongside complexity. It plots uniformly across all regions, perfectly orthogonal to the gradient. In the invariance region, highly polysemous words operate with negligible coordination cost. A word like pitcher names both the vessel and the contents, and context selects the correct sense cheaply. Moving into the contestables and fluids regions, semantic drift accelerates. Senses of words like justice or consciousness travel between domains. Coordination is still achieved, but it carries significant institutional freight. Finally, at the ineffable horizon, multiple conflicting descriptions pile up. The multiplicity of terms indicates repeated compressive failure, and coordination completely collapses. Ambiguity does not break communication. Communication at the horizon is already broken, and ambiguity is simply the debris. Polysemy itself is innocent. It is the varying cost of coordination that dictates success or failure. Let's return to the kitchen counter to confront an obvious objection. Standard Gricean pragmatics argues that context simply disambiguates which internal concept the hearer chooses. We can visualize this traditional framework as the representational triangle: thinker, concept, and thing. Under Piotrowski's model, the fixed application conditions are stripped from the word itself, but they are simply reinstalled into the private concept node. The representational triangle remains entirely intact. The mediated encounter ontology, or MEOW, dissolves the triangle entirely. It strips application conditions away from both words and concepts, completely removing them from the board. Instead of checking internal conditions, language acts as a cue. It directs attention within a pre-structured field, composed of material constraints and physical affordances. A pitcher containing sugar water affords pouring, an empty one does not. Reference emerges organically from the relational organization of the encounter, rather than arriving fully formed from a private mental state. If meaning emerges from the encounter, we face the risk of linguistic idealism. What prevents a word from meaning absolutely anything the user wants it to mean? The system is bounded by material constraint. If the user directs the cue for water at the empty pitcher, the command fails entirely. This failure is public and repeatable. It fails because the physical world declines to cooperate with the description. When the cue redirects to the pitcher containing sugar water, the thinker, concept, and thing stabilize together around that physical affordance. They are po-stabilized under constraint. The water, the sugar water, and the lemonade are not metaphysically isolated substances taking turns on the counter. They are overlapping, stabilized patterns within an evolving encounter. We divide them with nouns only because the division is practically useful. Words do not possess fixed application conditions, and they do not refer to reality alone. Language functions as a synchronization protocol. It supplies just enough of a cue for our differently mediated structures to converge upon the next coordinated action. The word does not contain the referent, nor does it float free of physical reality. It participates in an encounter through which reality is selectively made available for action, ensuring the practical task is successfully completed. The lemonade gets made.